All right, Shabbos, let's begin. Baruch Hashem, we are up to our final parak in Maseches Berachos, and this ninth parak is ridiculously amazing. Ridiculously amazing. Ton of Agarata, great halacha also. Anything and everything you could ever want in a parak of Gemara and more, and it's packed. It's packed. So it's a great schos Baruch Hashem to be able to begin this on Rosh Chodesh, and the Meretz Hashem be able to begin this haskalah together. So Daf Nun Dalet 54a, the Mishnah says as follows: Hara makom shenasa bo nisim li Yisrael. If a person sees a place in which miracles were performed for Klal Yisrael. So again, I'll say like many Mishnayos that we see, will begin, the Mishnah is kind of going to espouse principles, and then we'll obviously have to delve into the deeper meaning of that in the Gemara itself. So what kind of miracles we're talking about? So we'll see. Point over here is you come to a place where you see a miracle occurred for Klal Yisrael. Omer Baruch Sha'asa Nisim Lavasin B'Makom Hazeh. Ultimately, you say a bracha. There's a bracha, and it's Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, right? Blessed are you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Sha'asin Nisim Lavasin B'Makom Hazeh, who has performed miracles for our forefathers in this place. In this place, it's interesting. We'll get into this a little bit, but one of the places where one is permitted to go ahead and recite this particular bracha is if you ever go on the Jordan Valley Road, right? If you go ahead into Route 60, right? If you drive out of Yerushalayim, so if you make a right, you go up, you go south, you go to En Gedi, Masada, you go left, that's the Jordan Valley Road. So you drive obviously right along the Jordan River. So there is a spot there, there's a spot there called Ras Al Yahud, which is now primarily like a monastery. So for the Christians, it has a tremendous amount of significance. They say, whatever happened there, but they seem to say that historically, that's also the spot where Klal Yisrael crossed the Yarden. That's the spot where the Klal Yisrael crossed the Jordan River to enter in Eretz Yisrael with Yoshua. So according to many poskim, one is permitted to say the bracha Baruch Sha'asa Lavosenu Neis B'Makom Hazeh. In that place where you can see Klal Yisrael cross to the Yarden. Okay, in any event, Makom Shenekra Menu Avodah Zarah. If you pass by a place that had idolatry there, but then idolatry was uprooted from that place, Omer Baruch Sha'akar Avodah Zarah Me'artzenu. You make a bracha. Blessed are you, Hashem, who has uprooted idolatry from our land. Ala zikin va'al hazvaos v'al hara'amim. So, we'll say, we'll define all of these terms. The Gemara is going to discuss what zikin are. But we'll see that zvaos, ra'amim, ruchos, brakim are earthquakes or thunder or fierce wind or lightning. Omer Baruch Shekocho Gvurasa Male Olam. You say the bracha. Now again, remember again, the Mishnah is listing it shorthand. Obviously, the way these brachos are Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam, and then fill in the blank. Shekocho Ugvurasa Male Olam. Whose strength and Gvura. We'll see Koach and Gvura are really two different types of strength. Fill up the world. Ala Harim Vala Gvos. If you see great mountains or great valleys, Va'al Hayomim, or great seas, Va'al Anaros, or rivers, Va'al Medbaros, or deserts. So again, we're going to discuss which types of items. In other words, we're talking about you see incredible things in nature. Incredible things in nature. Omer Baruch Oseh Berachos. You ultimately say the bracha Baruch Oseh Berachos. Blessed are you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Now in Hagos it's Yunim. He adds in over here Maaseh Berachos. So blessed are you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who creates incredible things. Rabbi Yehuda says, Haroah Esayam Hagadol, one who sees the great sea. Again, we'll discuss which sea that is. Omer Baruch Sha'asa Esayam Hagadol. You make the bracha, blessed are you, Hashem, who has made the great sea. Bizman Shaver Leprakim. Now, we're going to see, let's say you have waterfront property on the Yam Hagadol, wherever the Yam Hagadol is. You have waterfront property. So you wake up every single morning, you see the Yam Hagadol. So obviously you're not going to say a bracha every single day. All of these brachos we're going, I shouldn't say all of these brachos. Many of these brachos are only recited when you experience these things at intervals, episodically. If you're experiencing it consistently, we'll see sometimes you do make a bracha, sometimes you don't. Good. Ala Gishamim, V'Abasarosav is beautiful. On rain. We have such a different conception of rain in Chutz La'aretz, right? In Eretz Yisrael, rain is bracha. So a lot of times, like in diaspora, rain is an inconvenience. But when it rains, or on Besaros Tovos, on good news, Omer Baruch HaTov V'Hametiv. We recite the bracha Baruch HaTov V'Hametiv, that are blessed are you, Hashem, who does good and bestows good. Al Besaros Ra'os. What happens, Chas Shalom, for negative tidings? One hears bad news. Omer Baruch Dayan Ha'emes. One says, blessed are you, Hashem, the truthful judge. Bana bayis chadash, v'kana kelim chadashim. The person buys a new house or purchases new utensils. Omer baruch shechianu v'kiyamanu v'higiyanu lazman hazeh. The bracha of shechianu, beautiful. Mevarich ala ra, me'in ala tova, ve'ala tova me'in ala ra. Shabbos said this statement is a bit enigmatic. So literally translated, it means we make a bracha on bad things in the same way we make a bracha on good things, and we make a bracha on good things in the same way they make a bracha on bad things. So it's not immediately clear from the Mishnah what that means. Rashi explains over here that on good things, right, or on bad things, we say dayan ha'emes, and on good things, we say atova hametiv. So what exactly the Mishnah means when it equates the two, we'll have to see in the Gemara. We will say this is an incredible line. V'atzarek l'sha'avar harezo tefillah shav. If somebody davens about something that has already happened, that is called a prayer in vain. A tefillas shav. To daven over something that already occurred is considered to be an unnecessary. Tefillas shav literally means like an I'm sorry. No, shav like a shvua shav means a nothingness, like a nothingness. Like losisha Hashem Elokech Lashav means like to take in vain. So it's a tefillah. It's not false. Would be sheker. We're going to see why the nuance over here is very important, because again, Chaburah could do anything, but to go ahead and daven for something that has already occurred is considered. We'll call it for our purposes now a prayer in vain. A prayer in vain. Shav, Haisa is incredible. Haisa ishto mu'beres. Let's say a man's wife was pregnant. V'omer yiratzon sheteled ishti zachar. And the husband davens, yiratzon Hashem should be your will, that my wife should have a boy. Okay? So what's the halacha? Harezu tefillah shav. This is a prayer in vain. Now, actually, it's interesting. Again, what Gemara is going to discuss, there is a certain time in the beginning of the pregnancy where we're allowed to daven over the gender, but after a certain point when we know that gender is already decided, you can't daven. You can't daven for gender at that point. It's interesting. Okay, we'll see all of this in Meretz Hashem. We'll see all of this in the Gemara. Haya baba derech. V'shama kol tzavcha ba'ir. Right, so let's listen to this. Reuven walks into the city and he hears a commotion in the city. Right, a tragedy has happened in the city, but he doesn't know where the tragedy happened. Va'omer yiratzon shelo tehei b'soch beisi, and he davens. Right, Yiratz Hashem, let it be that this tragedy didn't occur in my home. I will say, by the way, this I think is the most reflexive tefillah that everyone davens at some point, right? You hear about something, you're not sure what's going on, right? You ever have this, right? You're driving, you see a fire engine, right? Chas Hashem going like in the direction of your house. It's like the most natural. Chaburah, please just don't let that be in my home. The Gemara says that's a tefillah shav. That is a tefillah in vain. Now, what's the idea of a tefillah in vain? You can't daven over something that has already occurred. In other words, if it's already happened, I will say there is this there's this incredible tension over here between, on one hand, I daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu because I believe Hashem could do anything, but at the same time, once the event has occurred, I have to slip into the state of acceptance. So to daven for something that has already occurred represents a lack of acceptance of the divine will. So once the gender of the baby has been determined, accept it. The tragedy has unfolded. Whoever is the victim of that tragedy, it's already unfolded. Your tefillah is not going to make a difference one way or the other. And therefore, again, so before the event has been determined, of course, daven. Once the event has already unfolded, don't daven. That's a tefillah in vain. Hanichnas lekrach mispalo shtayim. When a person enters into a city, now we're going to see, the Gemara explains over here, that it's talking about a city where there's some element of danger. So you walk into a city. Rashi says, "Nichnas lekrach amahalik b'derech v'tzarach lavar krach v'sham mitzuyim moshlim roim u'metafsim alilos." So metafsim alilos. So you're walking through a city that's dangerous. That's dangerous. We don't know anything like that, but I'm saying, of a city that's dangerous. But right, but Lamaisa, maybe you have a friend, right? So you go ahead and you walk through into a city that's dangerous. Mispal shtayim. You have to utter 2 tefillos. Achas bichnisaso, one ultimately when you walk in, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, please don't let me be harmed as I enter into the city. Va'achas b'yitziaso, and then a tefillah of gratitude when you leave unscathed. They will say this is very beautiful, because if you think about it, no one ever has to remind us that we have to daven in a time of danger. What we sometimes forget is that when we emerge from the difficult circumstances, you also have to daven. It's a tefillah of gratitude. A tefillah of gratitude. So no one ever forgets the first one. Sometimes, unfortunately, we forget the second one.
Rabbi, question. I'll probably jump the gun, but if you bench Gomel, isn't that the same thing as saying a prayer
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to see, in fact, again, part of how Gomel is derived from this. Baruch Givanti, you're not jumping the gun at all. We're going to see in the Gemara. Excellent. Ben Azai says Arba. Ben Azai says not 2 tefillos. This is very interesting. 4 tefillos. Ultimately, again, 2 when you enter into the city, and ultimately, again, 2 when you leave this city. No sin al dal sha'avar v'tzoik al ha'asid. So again, we'll see in the Gemara exactly like what the 4 are, but the Mishnah seems to say that according to Ben Azai, when you enter into the city, you thank Hashem ultimately again for allowing you to enter, and then that's the what we'll call it, retrospective tefillah, and then there's the prospective tefillah. Let me be safe while I'm here, and then when you leave, you thank Hashem retrospectively. Thank you for letting me be safe and give me safety and security going forward. Again, we'll explain in the Gemara. Chayv adam levarich al hara kishem shemevarich al hatovas. We'll say very beautiful Gemara. A person is obligated to go ahead. And literally to bless Hashem for the bad. I'm just going to translate ra as bad right now. That's how we'll translate it. So person is obligated to bless Hashem for the bad things, kishem shemavarich al hatova, in the same way that I have to bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the good things. Now, what exactly that means, we have to understand, right? What does that mean? Then I'm supposed to have gratitude for the bad things like I have for the good things. So there are some people who are capable of that, but most of us are not really capable of that. So the Pashtus, what it means is the same way that when something good occurs, ultimately, again, I recognize that it's from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So when something negative occurs, I have to recognize that it's from HaKadosh Baruch Hu as well. Remember, again, no one's suggesting that when something bad happens, you should say the bracha of Shachianu, right? No one's suggesting that. The bracha is Dayan HaEmes. That's the bracha. God, you are the truthful judge. But there has to be an acknowledgement that these hurtful and quote-unquote bad events are from the Ribono Shel Olam as well. And therefore, the Yid has an obligation to acknowledge the role of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the good events and in the bad events. Shnei Amar, says so beautiful. Shnei Amar, v'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha b'chol levavcha. The pasuk says, love Hashem with all of your heart. So the Gemara says, what does it mean with all of your heart? B'chol levavcha, b'shnei yitzrecha, b'yetzer tov, b'yetzer hara. What does it mean you have to love Hashem with all of your heart? All of your heart means with your yetzer tov, your good inclination, and with your yetzer hara, your evil inclination. Now I'll say now I understand how to love Hashem with my yetzer tov. What does it mean to love Hashem with my yetzer hara? What does that mean? So we'll say, one of the most beautiful things we have in Yiddishkeit is a recognition that even when a person sins, that energy to sin comes from within. So my goal is if I could just take that same energy that I used for sin and rechannel it into something productive, I could accomplish so much. So even in sin, there's a recognition of my greatness. The very koach that fueled sin, if harnessed and rechanneled, could produce so much good. So the Gemara says, it's not just enough to love Hashem with your Yetzer HaTov, but you even have to love Hashem with your Yetzer Hara. How do you love Hashem with your Yetzer Hara? When I make a mistake and when I sin, which inevitably I do, figure out how I went wrong, see that, look at this koach that I possess, and now rechannel it, repurpose it. Ubechol nafshecha. What does it mean to love Hashem with all of your soul? Afilu hu notel es nafshecha. Even if he goes ahead and takes your soul. Even right, in other words, I have to love HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even to the point that ultimately, again, he takes my life. Ubechol ma'odecha, with all of my means. Bechol mamoncha. That means ultimately, again, with all of your money. With all of your money. Davar acher, the other possibility is bechol ma'odecha, bechol mid. So that means, in other words, we'll say that I have to be ready to give up my life for Hashem, and I have to be ready to give up my money for Hashem. Davar acher, bechol ma'odecha. What does bechol ma'odecha mean? Bechol mida umida shumodid lecha havi moda. Whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu throws your way, say thank you. Say thank you. Whatever Hashem throws you. In other words, say there is this recognition that the Ribono Shel Olam loves us more than anything, and therefore whatever circumstances He chooses to visit upon me somehow, some way, are for my good, and therefore I have to go ahead and acknowledge that. I have to acknowledge that, and again, thanking Him, acknowledging Him. Thinking might be a little bit difficult, but acknowledging that it all comes from Him, that's my avodah. Lo yakel adam es rosho keneged sharim mizrach shu mechuven keneged beis kodesh hakadosh. In the Beis Hamikdash, a person should not act in a light-headed way opposite the Eastern Gate, because the Eastern Gate was right directly opposite the Holy of Holies, the Kodesh HaKadoshim. V'lo yikanis lahar habayis v'maklo min alo v'punoso ba'avak shal raglov v'lo yasenu kapendaria or Rikika Mikal Chomer. Furthermore, again, we'll say when a person goes on to the Harabayis, a person goes on to the Temple Mount, to the base of Mikdash, you can't go with your walking staff, you can't go with your shoes, you don't go with your muddy belt, and you have to wipe off the dirt, the dust that is on your feet, nor are you permitted to make the Harabayis into a shortcut to get somewhere else, or Rikika Mikal Chomer, and you certainly can't spit on the Harabayis. So we'll discuss the symbolism behind all of these things that you can't do on the Harabayis. Kol chos me Berachos Mikdash omrim ada olam. So I'll say it's interesting. We're going to see in the Beis Hamikdash when they answered Berachos, they didn't say Amen. Instead, what they said was Min ha'olam. Min ha'olam. Or I should say Ad ha'olam, I should say. They answered Ad ha'olam. If you take a look at Rashi, it's actually right across. So I'll say, so they wouldn't answer Amen in the Beis Hamikdash, and we'll see why that was. Instead, what they would answer was Baruch Hashem ad ha'olam. So the Gemara says, what happened? Now, which literally means, blessed are you Hashem ad ha'olam, for all of the world. B'shekilkulu aminim. When the apikarsim, right, the non-believers came along, va'amru ein olam ela echad. So they said, oh, you see from here, from this response, that there's only one world. There's just this world, and there's no world to come. So what happens? Hiskinu she'omrim mina olam v'ada olam. So they instituted in the Beis Hamikdash that you shouldn't just recite ada olam, but rather you should say mina olam ad ha'olam. Blessed is Hashem from this world until the next. Hiskinu she'adam shoel eshlom chavera b'shem. Furthermore, the rabbis instituted that when inquiring about the welfare of another person, you should utilize the name of God in that inquiry. I was saying, and normally, again, we wouldn't normally use the name of Hashem when asking someone how they're doing, because that would seem to be a misuse of the name of God. So who's the first one who did this? Shneimar v'hinei Boaz ba mi beis lachem, vayomer lakotzrim Hashem imachem. Right, Boaz, when he comes back to check on his field, he says to the reapers, right, to the harvesters, Hashem imachem, right, Hashem should be with you. Vayomru lo yivarechecha Hashem, and they responded to him, Yivarechecha Hashem. So it's incredible. So Boaz is greeting them with the name of God. They're greeting Boaz with the name of God. Va'omer Hashem imcha gibarachayil, and ultimately again they said Hashem is with you, strong, right, gibarachayil, literally strong and valiant one. Va'omer al tavos kizekeni imecha. So I'll say. So now, what the Mishnah finds incredibly unique about this is, how are you able just to use the name of Hashem like this? Right? That again, Boaz is just coming and he says again, Hashem imachem, yivarechecha Hashem, Hashem imcha. We're so careful about how we use the name of God, and yet here they just seem to be slinging it around in all of these greetings. So what's the pshat? The Gemara says, Va'omer, Eis lasos laShem heifaru sorasecha. So literally translated, there is a time to uphold for Hashem. They have negated your Torah. Now, what does that mean? Rabbi Yochanan Omer, the Omer Kra. Rabbi Nassan Omer, Hafru sorasecha mishum eis lasos laShem. That sometimes, this is incredible what I'll say, sometimes you have to negate certain precepts of the Torah in order to uphold the Torah. Now, don't try this at home, right? But we're going to discuss this idea that sometimes you have to take certain shortcuts with certain concepts of the Torah in order to safeguard the Torah as a whole. So again, we'll see this in the Gemara, but essentially the Gemara is saying is like this, is ideally, one would not utilize any greeting with the name of Hashem. You just wouldn't do that. That sounds the right way to use the name of Hashem. We're going to see that Boaz in his generation felt that there was a general lack of God awareness. So how did he try to remedy the lack of God awareness? How did he try to remedy it? By introducing HaKadosh Baruch Hu into the vernacular. How did he introduce Hashem into the vernacular? Into the greetings. So is it the ideal way to use the name of Hashem? Absolutely not. But sometimes in life you have to do unideal things, or I don't know if it's good English, less than ideal things, in order to be able to serve the greater good. Now, you and I aren't making calls like that, right? That's above our pay grade. But Chazal, we'll see other examples, is Chazal said that sometimes you have to be lenient with certain things and even cut corners in certain things in order to allow for the greater continuity of the system, right? So we'll say, what a Mishnah. What a Mishnah, right? So Shkayach Chazal for tonight. The journey continues tomorrow, same time tomorrow. Meretz Hashem. Shkoyach. And good Chodesh.